I'm Turks, JQ Grant, and Conspiring with you guys.
Jake needs to give me space to set up the story. Okay?
I need to. That's
what we're starting with right off the top.
Right, okay? That needs to be established, okay? And we should really adjudicate that on air, and that's a good idea. Okay, is there any other show like this? You gotta be crazy, dog. Okay, and then number two, we've decided ahead of time. On tonight's show, we're gonna give you at least a 7 out of 10. We could do better, but let's see what it looks like, but at least a 7 out of 10, man. So buckle up, okay?
My trick is to set expectations low.
That's right. That is a quote from Bush, yes. All right, Casper, in all seriousness, kind of.
All right. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has been raising red flags in regard to inflation. And I wanted to be fair to him because the media narrative of the argument that he's trying to make has been twisted into something that he's not saying. In fact, if you're watching corporate news, cable news, it's very likely that you'll hear them argue that Larry Summers is worried about how the federal government is providing too much social spending and how that leads to inflation. But that's actually not what his argument is. We're gonna get to his argument in just a second, but here's a little montage of cable news hosts basically twisting what Larry Summers has been saying.
Larry Summers, he pointed this week to the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that was passed earlier this year. In March, he said that's a major reason behind the rising inflation, something he called at the time, quote, the least responsible macroeconomic policy we've had in the last 40 years. Is it possible that Americans are suffering now from high prices because the Biden administration overstimulated the economy with all of this money going into the economy?
The inflation thing is so real that everybody acknowledges it now.
And of course, it's not just Republicans. I mean, Larry Summers has worried about it openly, and Joe Manchin worries about it quite rightly. And the problem Joe Biden has is that it's going to affect the passage of Build Back Better.
They've already created a lot of harm this year with the previous $2 trillion package they passed earlier this year without a single Republican vote. It created raging inflation, which Larry Summers, the last honest Democrat in town, admitted was going to happen, predicted was going to happen. So the best way to sum up the impact of this package, if the Democrats pass it, and of course it'll be all by themselves, is they double down on all of the mistakes they've already made this year.
Yeah, well, I thought you put it well. I mean, and Larry Summers deserves a lot of credit.
Now, Larry Summers just published an op-ed in the Washington Post, and it is fascinating how he explicitly mentions that he doesn't think that doing away with the Build Back Better agenda is the right solution to tackling inflation. Now, he does say this: excessive inflation and a sense that it was not being controlled helped elect Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and risks bringing Donald Trump back to power. And look, to be fair, he does get a few things wrong in this op-ed. For instance, he argues about the price of oil, saying that the price of oil, the most important global determinant of inflation, is very high and not expected by forward markets to decline rapidly. He probably should have mentioned the fact that the OPEC cartel manipulates the price of gas by basically holding back production of oil. Didn't mention that, but whatever. He mentions that oil is or gas prices are inflated right now. But he does have this moment of clarity, and this is the relevant part. He says this: let's not compound errors that have already been made with far too much fiscal stimulus and overly easy monetary policy by rejecting Build Back Better. The legislation would spend less over 10 years than it was spent on stimulus in 2021. Because that spending is offset by revenue increases and because it includes measures such as childcare that will increase the economy's capacity, Build Back Better will have only a negligible impact on inflation. Instead, what he focuses on in his op-ed is the Fed's monetary policy. And guess what? He's exactly right about that. Let me give you his argument real quick, Cenk. He says the Fed should signal that the primary risk is overheating and accelerate tapering of its asset purchases. What he's referring to right here is what's referred to as quantitative easing. Given the house price boom, he writes, mortgage related purchases should stop immediately. Because of inflation, real interest rates are lower. As money is easier than a year ago, the Fed should signal that this is unacceptable and will be reversed. The focus is on monetary policy, and he's actually right about that. But you have cable news pundits and anchors taking his words and twisting it to apply to social spending by the Biden administration.
Yeah, so I know there was a lot of financial terms in there, but let's boil it down a little bit further. So just to be absolutely clear, Larry Summers is saying the heart of the problem is the Federal Reserve printing too much money, okay? That's the monetary policy, okay? So he says specifically in the op-ed that Build Back Better will have only a negligible impact on inflation. So almost no impact at all. And he explains why, because it's already paid for, etc. So they took, I know, right? They took that statement and twisted it to say, oh, Build Back Better is what's gonna destroy inflation, and Larry Summers, right? So guys, the reason why that's so important, and by the way, it's almost all the press. Here's a Mediaite article, and I generally like Mediaite, but this is the headline, Clinton Treasury Secretary warns Democrats that dismissing inflation, quote, risks bringing Donald Trump back in 2024. That makes it sound like if you pass Build Back Better, that's gonna lead to inflation. And Larry Summers, the Clinton person, is warning you, the Democrat is warning you, you better not do that, because that's gonna bring Donald Trump all the way back. Because you have to always tie it back to the boogeyman, right? And so Larry Summers half intends that because he thinks if I just mention Donald Trump, everybody will pay attention. And the thing that they'll take away from this is if you don't listen to me, Trump's gonna come back. So that part worked out perfectly for him. But the second part, they just took his words and twisted it.
Totally.
And so why did they do that? Because the media cherry picks its experts. They could have taken a progressive expert. By the way, you say, oh, well, yeah, but Larry Summers is a big guy and well-known and credible because he was Treasury Secretary for Bill Clinton. So what? Robert Reich is an incredibly credible economist who was the labor secretary for Clinton. So you could take Robert Reich's articles and everybody could be talking about Reich says pass it and it'll help the economy. Reich says pass it, it'll help the economy. But they never quote him. They only quote Larry Summers. And then on top of that, they cherry pick within Larry Summers' op-ed and in fact twist it to mean the opposite of what he said.
It's so fascinating.
And so why does almost everyone in the media do that? From Fox News to CNN. Because they don't want you to pass a bill that could raise corporate taxes. And so they're trying to kill that bill in every way imaginable with every dirty trick they have in the book. They never did any of that when they were giving $4 trillion to the largest corporations in America.
Yep.
There was no fear mongering, there was no cherry picking, etc. So now you see what the agenda of corporate media is. It's to help corporations, not you.
He even writes this. Financial regulators, he writes, need to step up and be attentive to the pockets of speculative excess that are increasingly evident in financial markets. And I mean, look, it's hard to know what he's specifically referring to there, but as we've seen, 2021 has been a record year for corporate stock buybacks. It has been a record year for private equity firms buying up single family residential properties. We just did a story about how Zillow is looking to offload thousands of homes that it acquired as part of its home flipping venture that didn't work out so well for it. So, there's all sorts of waste and bad behavior at the very top. There's the monetary policy that provides cheap money to corporations and to banks, of course. And of course, this is meant to provide liquidity. I just think it's all super, super fascinating stuff because again, most of his focus, as it should be, has been on the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve has had the biggest impact in regard to inflation in the housing market. Because where do you think the private equity firms got that easy money from? It's because of the Fed's monetary policy, right?
And so last two things for me on this is that also think about the argument that the press is making. You have to listen to Larry Summers, even if they were telling the truth about what Larry Summers said. You have to listen to Larry Summers, otherwise Trump will come back. Well, who did Larry Summers advise earlier? Hillary Clinton. Did Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump or did she lose to Donald Trump? So they're saying now, remember the one person who lost to Donald Trump, their top advisor is telling you how to not bring Trump back. Well, we wouldn't have Trump in the first place if it wasn't for people like Larry Summers and all the Clinton advisors. But it's amazing how they twist the facts. In mainstream media, we're not talking about Fox News here. This is alternative facts on mainstream media. Well, if you don't want to lose to Donald Trump, you have to listen to the Clinton people who lost to Donald Trump. Amazing. And then finally, I'm going to give last words to one of our members because it's such a great point. TYT.com/join. To become a member and be part of the show, right? Or you can hit the join button below on YouTube. Sexy Speed Racer wrote in, no mention of the unfunded $2 trillion in tax cuts for the rich and corporate under Trump contributing to inflation, not to mention the deficit and national debt. That's a great point, guys. Because we mentioned the trillions they gave to corporations under COVID relief earlier. He's talking about the Trump tax cuts. So we've talked about how it adds to the debt and deficit, but he's adding a really good point there, which is, wait, if you're worried about inflation, there's a good way to get money back into the government and out of the economy, and in a way that is fair and just. You would raise taxes on corporations and the ultra wealthy that Trump cut to the tune of $2 trillion. That's a great way of bringing down inflation. So is a single cable news anchor talking about that? None, zero. Have any of the papers written about that? No. Because if it's the rich, they must be protected. Only you have to make sure that you cannot get any benefits of that bill. By the way, every one of them now also talking about how no, the wages are too high. It's contributing to inflation. I've now read half a dozen articles where they're like, the wages shouldn't be this high. Lower the wages. That's what's causing inflation.
Well, look.
And then they say, by the way, I'm sorry, Anna. They say, okay, how are people going to afford milk and gas? And our solution is take away their wages. Oh, come on. You guys don't care about the average American. You're a bunch of liars. Almost every one of you.
All right, well, let's talk about wages and more importantly, bonuses, because there are some workers in this country, if you want to call them workers, who are expected to get massive bonuses this year, despite all the fear mongering we hear about people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum not really getting much in pay raises, but still, it's a big deal when that happens. So, Wall Street is set to see its biggest bonus increases since basically more than a decade. So this is data that was released by Johnson Associates. They look at the pay scale and what's expected when it comes to pay increases among these Wall Street firms. And here's what they found. This year's expected increase are the largest since 2009, when several business areas were projected to receive bonuses that were 30 to 60% higher than the previous year, according to Johnson Associates. Now, overall bonuses for investment banking underwriters are forecast to jump 30 to 35% from the year prior, while investment banking advisors and equities traders can expect a 20 to 25% year-over-year bonus increase. So what is the justification for these pretty significant bonuses? Well, the argument here is, well, the Wall Street firms are also experiencing a labor shortage, so we need to pay more in the form of bonuses to retain talent, to ensure that we retain these wonderful hard workers. The other argument is booming deal activity, a hot IPO market, and climbing equities means bankers and traders are in line for outsized performance-based compensation. I want to just show you this chart that CNBC put together that gives you a sense of just how much these bonuses will be for various people working in Wall Street. So investment banking, underwriting, as I mentioned, 30 to 35% increases in their bonus. Sales and trading, you've got 20 to 25%. Investment banking, if you're working in an advisory role, on average, you're seeing a 20 to 25% increase in your bonus. And private equity is getting a nice bump as well with 15 to 20%. Now, when they talk about increased business activity, I'm curious if they're referring to any substantive business activity or if they're just talking about wheeling and dealing in the stock market. Because one thing that we've also noticed this year is that corporate stock buybacks are at record levels. And remember, a lot of these Wall Street firms, a lot of banks are receiving cheap money from the Federal Reserve thanks to their monetary policy. And so what do they do with that money that they get from the Federal Reserve? Are they investing in businesses? Are they doing something that's actually beneficial for American workers or the economy? Or are they just paying themselves? Well, S&P 500 companies in recent weeks have disclosed buybacks totaling $145 billion for the third quarter, and the total is likely to surpass $224 billion by the time all reports are in. That would be above the $223 billion in buybacks recorded in the fourth quarter of 2018, which was a record. So, just because you're seeing these pay raises or these bonuses among these Wall Street firms doesn't mean that they're actually doing something that's beneficial to the economy. They're taking advantage of cheap monetary policy, the cheap money that they get their hands on, and they're finding ways to invest it in themselves.
Yeah, so look guys, I wouldn't mind the bonuses and I understand why they do it, and they don't have a labor shortage like Wendy's does, but people are making money hand over fist, and so that does create a hot market for hot bankers, God help us, right? So I understand all the economics behind that, but the part that they never talk about in moments like this is, yes, but what happens when it crashes? So if it turns out it was a bubble, and there was no real value there that they were creating, and later all those stocks crash and you lose money from it, do those bankers then give back their bonuses? No, of course not. No, they take home all the bonuses and then they go, there was nothing we could do. And then they say, well, look, you got to retain our top level talent here to run these banks, even if they crash. Why do I say all this? Because it already happened. This is the second largest increase since 2009. Why was there such a big increase in 2009? Because the crash was in 2008. And so after the crash, they still got some bonuses, but in 2009, they went back to big bonuses, right?
Right, but what type of policy was implemented under the Obama administration to basically recover the economy? It was quantitative easing by the Federal Reserve. So the same monetary policy that the Federal Reserve is engaging in right now. And that policy creates this unequal and unjust economic recovery, where those at the very top, in the case of 2008, those who actually destroyed the economy get paid handsomely and everyone else suffers.
Now, mind you, one other thing that's important here. Everyone on cable news is demagoguing about inflation. And they're saying part of the problem, I did a segment on this about Stephanie Rule, but I've now seen a number of them do this. Part of the problem is higher wages, they say, for the average American. It's leading to inflation. No one has done a story about too many Wall Street bonuses leading to higher wages, leading to inflation. But they get way more money than you guys do. I mean, that overall, their wage increases is monstrously higher than yours. And they could say, hey, I deserved it, blah, blah, blah. But you can't say the average guy is making too much money because he moved up from $7.25 to $7.75 an hour. And we got to make sure his wages don't go up at all. And congratulations to the Wall Street bankers. They get another couple of $1 million a piece, right? And that doesn't affect inflation.
Exactly.
So their hypocrisy is hilarious.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got a fantastic story. It involves one of my favorite people, Representative Katie Porter, asking some tough questions in regard to what's transpiring over at the post office. We've got that story and more when we come back.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio. Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I've seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartz.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
All right, back on TYT, Jake and Anna with you guys. News.
All right, let's do it. Representative Katie Porter wanted to ask some questions about what's been taking place at the post office, because chances are you might have noticed that it's taking a lot longer to get packages, to get your mail, or even to get your checks. And so she wants to know if the policies that Louis DeJoy, the Postmaster General, who was appointed by Donald Trump, has had an impact on the ability for the post office to perform its job, right? And getting you the packages that you need. So she had written this on Twitter. On-time mail delivery has plummeted under Postmaster Louis DeJoy, forcing veterans to wait longer for prescriptions, seniors to scramble to pay bills without their Social Security checks, and communities to feel less connected. Postmaster DeJoy needs to go. Now, whether or not he will go is something that we'll discuss in just a moment. But before we do so, I want to turn to this video of Representative Katie Porter speaking to Melina Perez. She is the post office's Deputy Inspector General for auditing. The post office just went through an audit, and you're gonna get some details about just how much the post office has been harmed by DeJoy's policies. Let's watch.
The audit found that by the spring of 2020, mail delivery was right around 92%. That dropped to 80% by the fall of 2020, and by January of 2021 was hovering at around 61%. When did Mr. DeJoy take over as postmaster? Do you know?
The summer of 2020?
The summer of 2020, so June of 2020. And what happened after he took over? Did the rate of on-time mail delivery go up or down?
Went down.
And I'm a professor, and I used to do a lot of grading. And 92% is considered widely like an A-. 80 is considered hanging on to the lowest possible B. 60% is at best a D-. The Postal Service delivers 48% of the world's mail. It is an institution, it is a civic treasure, and we let it get all the way. What you found is we let it get all the way to that D- level.
So you know she's serious when she's got that whiteboard ready. To be sure, Louis DeJoy has been pretty destructive to the post office, implementing policies that lead to, first of all, banned late or additional trips to deliver mail. He has decommissioned hundreds of high-speed mail sorting machines. He's also removed some mail collection boxes from the streets, and these changes have led to significant delays. And not to mention, he's got all sorts of business ties and conflicts of interest that play a role in this as well. I'll give you more details on that in just a second, but Cenk, why don't you jump in?
So DeJoy's obviously got to go. There's the issue of all the mail being delayed, and we used to have the best post office. I mean, we rightfully bragged about how great our postal service was, and they would deliver and rain, shine or snow, sleet, etc. Boy, did I bungle that one.
No, you nailed it.
Okay, anyways, and now they don't. Why? The Republicans destroy everything in government. So they go, oh, government doesn't work, and then they come in and they smash it to pieces and go, see, it doesn't work. Yeah, after you screwed it up. That chart that she had on the whiteboard was perfect explanation of that. But there's a reason why they're doing it, because it's not just because they want to get rid of the post office and have FedEx, UPS, and other companies pick up the slack and make much more money, charges a lot more. And DeJoy himself has companies that compete with the post office. It's mental. It's absolutely insane, okay? So they're destroying it on purpose for private interest, but also because of mail-in ballots. And in the last election, 25 to 50,000 ballots came in too late to be counted, because now the post office sucks under DeJoy. And that's on purpose. So in 2022, if they don't fix it, a lot more, now that it's deteriorated even more, a lot more will come in too late and not be counted. And now the mail-in ballots heavily favor Democrats. So if Biden doesn't fix this, he is a moron of epic proportions and like the most pathetically weak leader we've ever had. So this is a layup. Now, how you get rid of DeJoy is difficult. That part, like the decision is a layup, the execution is difficult, but I can tell you how to do that in a minute.
Right, exactly. And look, before you do, because I do think that's important information, I just want to kind of give everyone a little more background in regard to what Louis DeJoy has been up to, but more importantly, why it is that the post office has been under assault by Republicans, right? The biggest assault happened in 2006 under the Bush administration. So I want to go to graphic 5 here. The United States Postal Service has reported net losses of nearly $100 billion since 2007. Now that stems in part from 2006 legislation that required the agency pre-fund more than $120 billion in retiree health care and pension liabilities, a requirement that labor unions have called an unfair burden, not shared by other businesses and certainly not shared by government agencies. Remember, the post office is a government agency and it's expected to run like a business that pre-funds pensions for retirees. It's absolutely insane. Now, in regard to Louis DeJoy, what has he done specifically? Well, as Reuters had reported, the US Postal Service reports $4.9 billion in 2021 in net losses, right? They also write that the United States Postal Service implemented new service standards that slow some first-class mail deliveries as part of efforts to reduce red ink. The new standards revised 1 to 3 day service standards to 1 to 5 days, impacting about 40% of first-class mail. And as I mentioned, Postmaster Louis DeJoy in March announced a plan to cut $160 billion in predicted losses over the next decade. That means he's gonna fire a bunch of people. He says we have years of inflicted damage to fix that will necessitate us taking some continued uncomfortable actions, DeJoy said. So it's abundantly clear that his first and foremost, like the first priority he has is to dismantle what's left of the post office. And also consider the fact that he has those conflicts of interest. There should be an investigation into whether or not under his leadership, these contracts are being given by the post office to the corporations or the companies that he has ties to.
Okay, so now how do you get rid of him? First difficulty is that the president cannot directly fire the Postmaster General. That's because we want that post to remain independent of day-to-day politics. Now, did Trump keep it independent? No, he put a guy who wants to destroy the Postmaster office for his own profit into that position. But it is true that the president cannot fire the Postmaster General. So that you can't undo that. It is what it is, okay? And you have to be fair in how you assess whether the president is taking aggressive action enough. Like if I thought he could fire DeJoy and he wasn't, I'd go nuts. I'd be like, just fire him. What the hell's wrong with you? But he can't, right? Okay, so does that, for most Democrats, that's the end of the conversation. They're like, well, okay, that's good enough for a surrender, right? No, so who can fire DeJoy? Because obviously he can be fired like anybody else. Well, there's a 9-person board. And whoever is the president, that party gets to have 5 out of the 9 seats. Now, here comes Democratic incompetence. 3 of the Democratic seats are vacant. Obama tried to fill them, Senate Republicans blocked it because they actually care about their jobs and they care about their base. And they said, well, we don't care, we're gonna block everything, including the post office. Democrats, when Trump was in charge, like couldn't block a goddamn thing. Trump packed that board with not only 5 Republicans when he was in charge, but he replaced a Democrat that was leaving with a Democrat.
Yeah, someone who supports Trump, a so-called moderate.
Yeah, and who actively supports DeJoy.
Exactly. Yes.
So now, almost everybody on the board supports DeJoy because Trump packed it, and the Democrats have done nothing to fight back. They're just a grotesquely incompetent party. Okay, now here's what they could do. It's actually now relatively simple. You fill the 3 seats, you have another Democrat on there. And by the way, if you wanted, you could actually replace that Democrat too to be extra safe, right? If you needed to. And then a Trump appointed Republican is going to step down in December. That's it. Now, if Biden doesn't do this, then he's the weakest, least intelligent president we've ever had, okay? So then you appoint a Republican that is against DeJoy. There's a million Republicans who are never Trumpers, et cetera, super easy to find. If you can't pull that off, Trump did it. Trump's barely conscious. He's like one of the least intelligent people you've ever met in your life. And he got a Democrat to say he'll vote with Trump every time, right? So if Democrats can't do the same, nah, they don't want to win. It's next month. Let's see if Biden does it. But you know how Democrats are. I'd be pretty shocked if he did just elementary things to appoint those 5 guys, get rid of DeJoy, and bring the post office back to competence for both the mail reasons and mail-in ballot reasons.
Look, there's one key difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And honestly, Joe Biden can be replaced with any other generic Democrat. Donald Trump, regardless of how much you might like him or hate him, doesn't matter, okay? He's a steamroller. And if he wants something, doesn't care about what the laws are, doesn't care about what the rules are, he just goes for it. And no one stands in his way. Whereas Democrats, it's almost as if they preemptively look for excuses for why they can't do things.
And not almost, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
So-
and part of the reason is, and other Republicans do this too, it's not just Trump. McConnell does a great job of steamrolling.
McConnell's a little more sophisticated.
Yeah, and McConnell's part of the people who did this and protect DeJoy, et cetera. Why? Because corporate Republicans would love to destroy the government, and that's what they're doing here. And they want to privatize everything so their donors can make more money. And in the case of DeJoy, he is the donor. He's a Republican donor who runs these businesses, et cetera. So, but the Democrats, their donors tell them, no, don't take any action. Hey, I got shares in FedEx, I got shares in UPS, I got this, I got that. You better not take any action. So, and if they even do anything slightly aggressive, their donors yell at them at the top of their lungs. And then guys like Biden, who are already like by nature weak, are like, the donor yelled at me. I swear nothing will fundamentally change. I'll keep everything Trump kept in place. Look, it's not even proving us wrong. I'm saying, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm saying basically you'd have to be a moron not to fix this next month. But if he doesn't do it, then hey man, it's a layup at this point. Yes, you can't fire DeJoy, but you can definitely do the board. By the way, if none of that worked for mysterious reasons, and because all they're trying to do is find excuses, right? If you really wanted to do it, here's what you could do, whether it's DeJoy or any board member. Let's look into your business interests. I bet we find something interesting there, right? And the minute you publicize a couple of things they've done wrong in business, because there's no way in the world DeJoy didn't do things wrong in business. In fact, I think we covered that earlier during the Trump era. And then you start to put pressure on. You say, okay, I'm leaving. I was gonna leave anyway, right? But that's hardball tactics I would do in 1 second flat that Biden would never do in a million years. But it doesn't matter, he doesn't need to do that. He could just replace the board members if he has a pulse.
All right, let's switch gears. This next topic is very different from Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, but it's an important story, so let's talk about it. Women in red states, and in some cases, even blue states like California, are being charged with and even convicted of manslaughter if they suffer from a miscarriage. Now, one of the most recent examples is from the state of Oklahoma, where a woman by the name of Brittany Pulaw was charged and convicted with manslaughter. Now, Pulaw was just about 4 months pregnant when she lost her baby in the hospital in January of 2020. This October, she was convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison for first-degree manslaughter of her unborn son. Now, what's happening across the country is certain states are passing these laws that consider a fetus a human life, right? They're called personhood laws. And what they also do is if a woman suffers from a miscarriage, they will specifically ask whether the woman has taken any illicit drugs. They'll even do tests to ensure that the woman hasn't done illicit drugs. In this case, Pulaw had in fact admitted to using illicit drugs, and the medical examiner's report did find traces of methamphetamine in her son's liver and brain. Now, it's important though to note that the medical examiner did not determine the cause of death or what actually caused the miscarriage. The examiner did not determine the cause of death for the fetus, noting genetic anomaly, placenta abruption, or maternal methamphetamine use could have been contributing factors. So I'm gonna get into more details about what's taking place. We've covered this story throughout the years, and unfortunately, it's just getting worse. Some of these states have become more and more draconian as this type of story just kind of gets ignored and politicians just kind of let it slide.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to graphic 4 here because I wanna give you a sense of the scale of it. From 1973 to 2020, the National Advocates of Pregnant Women has recorded 1,600 such cases where women are prosecuted in the country for miscarriages, not abortions, miscarriages, with about 1,200 occurring in the last 15 years alone. So this is not an isolated case. It's happening to women all across the country. And then, in fact, here, let me give you an example. Let's go to graphic 6 now. In one California county, 2 women were jailed for allegedly killing their babies after experiencing stillbirths and testing positive for illicit drugs. Murder charges against Chelsea Becker were dropped this year after she spent 1.5 years in jail because she couldn't afford the $2 million bail, okay?
Yeah.
They dropped the charges. But already she spent 1.5 years in jail.
Believe it or not, out of the 2 California cases, she was the lucky one. The other woman was convicted and is still in prison. Adora Perez is about 1/3 of the way through an 11-year sentence for manslaughter after she pleaded guilty to avoid the harsher charge of murder. She's currently trying to appeal. Now, again, this has to do with women who might be addicted to an illicit drug. And as we know, this country is still grappling with an opioid epidemic. The issue has been completely ignored as of late, but it still exists. People are still suffering from this pharmaceutical company fueled epidemic. And to punish a woman who's pregnant and suffers a miscarriage for it, I think is the wrong way to go. If anything, if a woman is pregnant and happens to be addicted to a drug, you want to create an environment where that woman feels comfortable coming forward, looking for help so she can have a healthy pregnancy. But when you have these types of punitive measures in place, that creates a situation where women are going to be terrified to come forward. They're going to be terrified to look for help when they need it the most.
Okay, and so 2 other important parts of this story. One is it's not just for drugs. In different cases, women have been prosecuted for falling down and having a miscarriage. I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. In another case, giving birth at home. But wait a minute, a lot of people give birth at home. Well, no, you should have done it. By the way, the right wing should be furious about that, right? Why is the government making you go to a hospital, right? No, you giving birth at home? Well, we didn't like the way you were giving birth, okay? And it led to a stillbirth, that's it, you're going to prison. You're going to prison for murder. This is insane. Okay, and by the way, unfortunately, in a lot of so-called pro-life countries, this happens. In El Salvador, a woman was sentenced to prison for 30 years for having a miscarriage, and she died in jail. And so now,
it's almost as if these types of laws are not really about preserving life or anything like that. It seems like it's more about punishing women.
Absolutely, but not just women, but you're gonna be shocked to find out that women of color are overrepresented, okay? And I guarantee you, it's not in the articles that we read, but I guarantee you if you dove into the numbers, the poor would be deeply overrepresented of any color, okay? And so how can I prove that? Well, 6% of American pregnant women admit to using illicit drugs. 8.5% drink alcohol. So that's millions upon millions of people, even if you just took the drugs number, right? Did millions of women get prosecuted for this? No, because if a lady from the suburbs has one too many daiquiris, is a judge who's in her same demographic going to say, oh, shame on you, you criminal? You say, I know, but that looks like Susie, who I know, right? Etc. Whereas a woman does drugs and she's poor, you see these poor people, they have no responsibility at all.
And by the way, it doesn't even have to be a situation in which the judge or the person making these decisions has like a racial bias, right? It could just be that we have a justice system set up that provides better defense for individuals who have the money to buy better defense, right? To get a better attorney.
That's absolutely right, Anna. Like the woman who spent the 1.5 years in jail when they dropped the charges, that's because she didn't have the $2 million for bail, whereas a wealthy person could have walked the next day, right? But on top of that, judges are biased, honestly, towards upper middle class and upper class defendants because that's who they are. So when they see someone like that, they see, oh, that looks like my neighbor's kid, or that looks like my aunt, or whatever. When they see poor people of any color, they think the criminal class, right? And I think it's mainly subconscious. I'm not saying all judges are bad people, but that's what you saw, for example, in the Stanford rape case. Oh, the guy lost a swimming scholarship. Isn't that punishment enough? There, but for the grace of God goes that judge's kid. So in this case, guys, there's also the issue of drugs. When they used to call them crack babies when everybody was demagoguing about this, and they took it out on minorities mainly. But now we have OxyContin. So now it's across all races, right? But are wealthy and middle class white women being punished at the same rate if they're addicted to drugs while they're pregnant? no way that's happening.
Yeah,
okay.
and just to be super, super clear, no one, regardless of their race, regardless of their economic background, should be prosecuted like this if they suffer a stillbirth or a miscarriage. I mean, that is a traumatic thing for a woman to go through. You want to create an environment where women feel comfortable coming forward, seeking help if they are addicted to drugs. This is just meant to punish women, much like many of the anti-abortion laws that have already passed in red states are meant to do. Just punish women for their sexual activity. In this case, punish women for any activity that could have maybe contributed to a miscarriage.
Guys, they're taking over control of your bodies. It's not at all an exaggeration. One of our members, of course, came in, Ice Cream and Cake, said we get a little closer to living the real world version of Handmaid's Tale every day. And it's in this case, it really is true. Because that means the minute you get pregnant, you've lost complete control over your body, okay? Because not just because of abortion, but because of miscarriage. So, oh wait, you know what? You were 3 months pregnant, you drove too fast, got into a car accident. You shouldn't have driven 65, you should have driven 55. That hurt the fetus. Now, your life is not important, okay? We'll put you in prison. And one of the women that you see there, 11 years. We'll take away your life, your liberty, we'll take away anything we want because you're our chattel, okay? But the baby inside you, hey, that might be a male, that might be a boy. So the baby's important. But it's, by the way, it's not a baby, it's a zygote in a lot of these cases. The fetus, the embryo is important. Your life, your body, your freedom is not at all important. And that's exactly what message the government is sending. And in this case, it's only the right wing. The right wing is saying women do not deserve to control their bodies. They should not have the same freedoms that men do, and it's disgusting.
When we come back from the break, another mainstream media reporter publishing another book about Trump that we got to talk about. So we'll talk about that and more when we return.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show. No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of that, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube. The Shorties Award. Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, news and information channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks. Can I curse?
Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
The haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Pelosi.
I told you we were coming.
You talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock. And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock, and we're gonna run you out of town, and we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country. November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Back to back that I like.
Dave, say hi to the camera.
I don't like this.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
ABC's Jonathan Karl has written a book about the Trump presidency, claiming that Steve Mnuchin, former Treasury Secretary under Trump, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo considered invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office following the January 6th riots. Now, according to reporting, Mnuchin talked to other cabinet members about using the amendment on the night of January 6th. On the night of January 6th, the day of the attack, and the following day. Mnuchin spoke to Mike Pompeo, Trump's Secretary of State, and an avowed loyalist. Now, apparently Pompeo even went so far as to ask about a legal analysis for that process, right? Like, how would it play out? Is it worth doing? Can we actually get it done? But the analysis determined that it would take too much time, considering that Trump only had 14 days left in office, and any attempt to forcefully remove him would be subject to legal challenge. And so, of course, Mnuchin and Pompeo were reached for comment. Mnuchin did not comment, but there was an interesting response from Pompeo's team. Okay, so Mnuchin did not comment for Karl's book. Karl writes that Pompeo responded only after Karl told Trump the former Secretary of State had not done so. Pompeo, through a spokesman, denied there had ever been conversations around invoking the 25th Amendment, Karl writes. The spokesman declined to put his name to the statement.
Okay, guys, so let's get to some conclusions, and then I'll give you more context. Number one, that means it definitely happened. If it didn't happen, Mnuchin and Pompeo were the closest to Trump. They would immediately come on and go, no, that's a ridiculous fake news. No, there's no way that happened, right? Mnuchin still hasn't commented. He did it, there's no question he did it. Okay, and Pompeo, only after getting pressured by Trump, with an anonymous spokesperson putting out a statement so that they can't be caught on a lie? Come on, it definitely happened. It 100% happened. Okay.
So, in the words of my father, okay, whose cares?
Oh, I care 1,000%. Everyone should care 1,000%.
Okay, tell me why. I want to know.
Okay, so that's the two closest people to Donald Trump. Mike Pompeo was the most loyal throughout, and Mnuchin basically was the president on domestic and economic issues. Trump handed it off to Mnuchin, and that Treasury Secretary and State Department head are the 2 out of the 4 biggest cabinet officials. So if those 2 allies of Trump thought this guy is crazy, we should remove him from office for being mentally unfit, that means literally everyone around Trump knows he's absolutely bonkers. And I don't mean like in a fun way, oh, he's bonkers. No, like a lunatic, mentally unfit for any office. That is his closest advisors, his closest cabinet officials. But yet in the country, there's a debate about, oh, well, should he be president? Should he be president? The guys who worked with him the whole time say he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
No, but here's my problem, right? Because you'll see reports like this. You'll hear about White House lawyers threatening to quit if Trump does X, Y, or Z. But when push comes to shove, they don't do nothing. They don't really do anything, right? And so Trump, regardless of how much the people surrounding him disagreed with him, regardless of how much they saw him as a threat to the country, they all like nodded their heads, went along. They served as yes men for Donald Trump.
Oh, that's 100% right, but there's two different sets of people we're talking about. If you're talking about the people in power, then I share your skepticism completely. They're not gonna do anything. So in this case, why didn't they take that action? One, they were gonna run out of time, and that's fair, they probably were, right? But it would have been important symbolically, super important, in my opinion. And two, a lot of the cabinet secretaries that were outraged had already resigned after January 6th. So remember, Elaine Chao is Mitch McConnell's wife, and she resigned in protest, saying the president is nuts. I can't believe this happened, right? She did not those exact words, but she resigned in protest. And so did Betsy DeVos. So if they had kept DeVos and Chao and these two, and Pence, they might have had enough to say the president is literally crazy and we must remove him from office. That's not Democrats that said, that's Republicans. Now they didn't do it because of what Anna said. So we don't have to worry about, hey, are Republicans gonna be strong enough to defy Trump? There's no chance of that. Are the Democrats going to be strong and effective enough to be able to fight Trump? Almost no chance.
No chance.
Right, so that isn't the issue. That's the first set of people. The second set of people are the voters. If the voters all actually knew that everyone around Donald Trump thinks he's mentally unfit, that could affect their votes. And certainly, Anna, even if you say no, 40% of the country is utterly hopeless.
No.
If you told them Trump is literally nuts, but hates brown people, they would still vote for him. Okay, I might, I think that's too high a number, and I think half of Republicans are in that category, the other half are more questionable. But then remember, there's independents, and they would be greatly swayed by that. They would be. It's in the polling. You could see they sway back and forth on the issues, okay? And so, but has it been explained to the American people enough? No, Trump's top allies thinks he's nuts, right? And the answer is no. So the next time he goes into election, the Democrats will barely bring it up. The media will just do their standard yelling at Trump and call him a racist and stuff. And the American people will never find out the guy's an actual lunatic.
Yeah, I think it would have zero impact. Even if the media was constantly talking about, by the way, over the last 2 days, they have been constantly talking about this Mnuchin, Mike Pompeo story, right? I don't think it has an impact on his base at all. And I think what the issue is, look, what did Donald Trump in the 2020 election? Was it because of all of the maniacal things he did while he was in office? No, it was because of what happened to the economy and what happened to the country during the COVID pandemic. His handling of the COVID pandemic was really the only thing that persuaded voters to turn against him and go with Biden. And by the way, when you look at the swing states, Biden didn't beat him by that much, which is terrifying.
But I can prove my point definitively by telling you about the power of media and using it right. If Biden's Secretary of State and Secretary of Treasury said we had credible reporting that they were considering using the 25th Amendment because they thought Biden was mentally unfit, he wouldn't even make it through the term, okay? Because Fox News would go ballistic. Every conservative media outlet in the country would repeat that literally 1 billion times, okay? And they would say, mentally unfit, crazy, lunatic, lost it, senile. Even his top advisor, my God, his Secretary of State, my God, his Secretary of the Treasury. They both think he's a lunatic, right? And then CNN, MSNBC would be like, is he a lunatic or is he mentally unfit or is he senile? Which one is it? But either way, he should be removed. Should Kamala Harris be president? Should it be Pete Buttigieg? They would all talk about it nonstop. When it's Trump, a tiny bit here and there, and then they'll drop it. So you see my point, the power of media. If the Democrats were competent or the media was honest and actually could get information, actionable information to the public, it would make all the difference in the world.
I think the Democrats need to give voters something to vote for, right? Everything that they've done has relied on painting Donald Trump as a maniac. That's all they do, and it has not worked.
Well, Anna, I'll end on this, okay? It is enormously possible to do both. Trump used to attack everyone 24/7, and they were all effective because they were amplified. So it wasn't like Trump wasn't like, well, I can't attack Clinton and Eric Holder at the same time, to pick two random Democrats. No, he'd attack both of them and he'd tear both their guts out, right? And the conservative media would amplify it, and he'd do it twice a day, 8 times a day. So Democrats are like, wait, we can only do one thing at a time and mildly. Look, man, if a progressive, strong progressive ever gets in charge, you're gonna be amazed at what's possible, because Democrats your entire life have never actually put up a fight on anything. They could do it on policy, they could do it on this issue, they could do it on every issue, but they're super weak and they can barely get out of bed.
All right, that does it for our first hour. When we come back, now you have right-wing moms looking for bounties on teachers. That story and more when we come back.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
Gee, I wonder why we didn't get $15 minimum wage. Because they're all raising money from the guys who don't want to increase the minimum wage.
And we play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines.
The Republicans say we will serve our corporate masters at all costs, including killing democracy, yet here we are. Where else do you hear that? You hear that on NBC, on ABC, on CBS. You hear it nowhere.
They don't want to talk about money in politics because it's really hard to pass judgment when your media organization is funded by fossil fuel companies.
The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. And we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing, you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not seeing how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life.
Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change. All right, back on TYT, Jang and Anna with you guys. More news.
A group of conservative moms in New Hampshire who are backed by right-wing moneyed interests are so terrified that their children might be taught American history in schools that they're now offering bounties for teachers who might instruct students on things that they should probably learn about. Now, New Hampshire became one of the several states this year to explicitly ban concepts that have been labeled critical race theory. Now, we've been through this a billion times. Critical race theory is graduate level curriculum. It's something very specific. It is not taught in grade schools, but nonetheless, it's become a catch-all phrase for anything right-wingers don't like. The new regulations require teachers, by the way, found to be teaching divisive concepts. Very subjective here, divisive concepts to appear before the state's Board of Education for a disciplinary hearing, which could include losing their licenses to teach in public schools. Now, when Governor Chris Sununu signed the bill into law, a majority of his diversity council actually resigned in protest. So you kind of get a sense of, what the real intentions are with legislation like this. Now, the state has even provided a platform to file complaints against teachers suspected of teaching naughty things like American history. Last week, the State Department of Education launched a new website for parents and students to lodge complaints against educators they believe are violating the new law. The list of violations includes teaching that members of one group are inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. All right, and so what's the deal with this group of conservative mothers? Well, they're known as Moms for Liberty. And they are saying that they will pay $500 for every person who for the person who makes the first successful complaint against a public school teacher who's teaching the dangerous curriculum of American history. So there it is. We've got $500 for the person that first successfully catches a public school teacher breaking this law. Students, parents, teachers, school staff, we want to know. We will pledge anonymity if you want. Jake.
Yeah. All right. So they've now started bounties on teachers. That's like exactly what this is. It's not a bounty to hurt them, but it is a $500 bounty you collect if you can turn them in. And if you turn them in, they explain they want them fired. These are from the people who say they're against cancel culture, by the way. They're still talking, like no one in mainstream media clarifies that cancel culture is a right-wing phenomenon. Look at this, they're looking to get teachers fired all across the country, in this particular case in New Hampshire, for stating the wrong things, which by the way, are actually the correct things. If they teach actual history, they want them fired. And this is not hyperbole and it's not a small case. Polling indicates 4 out of 10 Republicans say that the history of racism in America should not be taught at all.
Yeah, it's absolute insanity.
That they should be wiped away, erased from the history books. You want to talk about cancel culture? They want to cancel our history, okay? Actual history. 53% of Republicans say that the continuing effects of racism should not be taught. Okay, so that's an even higher number. So critical race theory isn't even taught. It's an imaginary issue. So what they're trying to get people to do is, do not teach actual facts to our children. If you do, there's a bounty on your head, or at least on your career.
And I mean, we're already dealing with a shortage of teachers, especially during a pandemic where many just could not handle, for good reason, switching over to virtual learning, incredibly difficult. They're already severely underpaid. Before the pandemic, certainly during in-class instruction, they also have to worry about the mass shootings that happen in schools. There's an ongoing debate about whether teachers should be armed in response response to mass shootings in schools. Now they have to deal with right-wingers encouraging bounties. If they happen to teach American history that offends some of these conservative moms. And of course, this isn't some grassroots effort, as we've talked about before. Not only is this a manufactured culture war that the GOP is capitalizing on for their campaigning purposes, but this is also something that is backed by moneyed interests. In this case, I want to give you the details. Though Moms for Liberty co-founder Tina Desokovich has said in interviews that the group is mostly funded by small dollar donors and denied any connection to the Koch brothers or other conservative funders, the group has received thousands from a conservative Florida PAC and hosted a fundraiser in June with former cable news host Megyn Kelly that raised at least $57,000 from sponsors. And by the way, this is a growing movement, if you can call it that. In 10 months, Moms for Liberty has grown to 135 chapters in 35 states with 56,000 members and supporters, according to the organization's founders. The group hopes to one day have chapters in all 3,143 counties or equivalents in the United States. And so if you actually want your child to get a sound education, right? You want your child to learn about history. Doesn't matter what you want, because conservatives have decided that as long as they've got moneyed interests backing them up, they can be the arbiters of what history curriculum should be in our public schools.
Guys, every part of this gets worse and worse. Think about, how are the teachers going to get turned in? Well, the parents are not in the classroom. So they have to teach their kids to turn on their teachers. Listen for anything the teacher is saying. If she's teaching racism, come tell me, we're gonna get $500. We're gonna turn her in and we're gonna try to get her fired. And if we can get her fired, we collect, okay? So listen for, wait, slavery? It sounds like they're saying white people are racist. Okay, that's it, collect the money, get her fired, get her fired. She's teaching actual history. These are vigilante goons. One of our members wrote in, Greg, great point here. Moms for Liberty, they always have absurd names that are the exact opposite of what they're trying to achieve. Yeah, what kind of liberty is, no, the teacher cannot teach history. She has to teach a whitewashed, wrong version of history, otherwise she'll be fired and I collect my money. And guys, it's not just the teachers that they actually get fired. When they go on this terror campaign to have the kids turn on their teachers, it's gonna intimidate all the teachers until they go, well, I don't even wanna touch it. Let's just not even study that part, because it might get me fired. And even if it doesn't get me fired, it's all these stupid Neanderthal parents are gonna come in and yell at me at the top of their lungs. All the kids have turned on me. They've ruined education. They don't believe in science, now they don't believe in history. They don't believe in any facts. Now, if you're a right winger in this country, man, you're a lost cause. Sitting there going, oh no, man, facts suck. We shouldn't teach facts. We should teach propaganda. Racism never happened here. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Racism here now? Oh, no way. The effects of history, no, shh, don't teach it, don't teach it. Goons. And they take, and meanwhile, now on the politics side of it, Republicans take an issue that doesn't even exist. It's imaginary. No one is teaching critical race theory at this grade schools, right? And they won in Virginia on an issue that doesn't even exist. Meanwhile, Democrats have all the issues on their side according to the polling, and they just can't figure out a way to win.
What are they gonna do about the internet? First of all, they're making American history, just learning about it, very taboo. And so, you know what happens to like a human psychology once they're told that something is taboo. And then also, I mean, look, they're apparently succeeding in getting regular American history censored in our public school system, but they can't censor the internet. I mean, I'm sure they'll try. I'm sure they'll try, but
remember it during Trump, they took away net neutrality rules.
Right.
Now, one of the good things you should give Biden credit for, and this doesn't happen very often at all, but he did bring net neutrality back. So thank God for that. Okay, credit where credit is due. But Republicans, yeah, they tried to kill the internet, because why? They put a lot of lies on the internet, and that's worked out great for them. But you also could get the truth on the internet. So they're like, whoa. Let our corporate guys, goons, handle the internet so we can limit that too. They're gonna come for that, but they gotta be careful with that because it's so useful to them in spreading lies that it's a little bit lower priority. Last thing on this, the teachers union had a great quote, and I wanna tell you.
They said they basically declared a war on teachers. Now, if Democrats were 1% competent, they would flip this issue on the Republicans and go, are you gonna allow this war on teachers? Which, by the way, is absolutely true.
War on education.
War on education, war on teachers, war on our schools. But Democrats are like, what? Democrats are the Democratic leadership, dumbest people you've ever met in your life. This is handed to you on a silver platter. Not one of them will run on it, not one. None of them will ever talk about it. Instead, they'll get defensive and try to change the topic. They're just politically negligent and utterly incompetent. And what does the corporate media say? Nancy Pelosi is a master legislator. She is so good at this. Oh, you guys are vomitous and you're fools.
All right, let's move on. So Alex Jones is raging, and that's always fun to watch. Alex Jones is now raging over the fact that he was found guilty in the defamation lawsuit brought against him by the families of Sandy Hook victims. This was the Sandy Hook shooting that killed children, of course, and in response to that, Alex Jones referred to it as a false flag operation. Now, there were 4 different defamation lawsuits against him. He was found guilty in one of them, and that ruling has now served as the default ruling in the other 3 cases. So he has been found guilty of defamation. The judge, by the way, in the first lawsuit had provided multiple opportunities for him to comply with court orders, to turn over evidence in the discovery process. He ignored it, was really hard to deal with. And despite the numerous opportunities that he was given to comply, he refused to do it, and the judge found him guilty. Now, with that said, I do want to go to the first video of Alex Jones responding to this ruling, and we'll unpack it right after. Let's watch.
It's all a fraud, ladies and gentlemen. We hardly ever even talked about Sandy Hook. There were a lot of anomalies, a lot of issues, but I do know that school shootings do actually happen. I just know they're not my fault. And I know I didn't kill those children at Sandy Hook. When you think about Sandy Hook, you think about the name Alex Jones, ladies and gentlemen. And that's just branding and brainwashing and propaganda. And they just say, I'm guilty, 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 guilty for 4 years since they filed these ridiculous lawsuits. And they write articles saying I'm guilty. And then the judges just go ahead and say, you're not going to get a jury trial. You're defaulted. Now a jury will decide how guilty you are. And folks, they're going to double default. You understand that? They're going to double default. I told the lawyers this years ago. They're going to double default and not even let me be at the trial to decide how guilty I am. This is a joke. It's beyond a kangaroo trial. It's beyond a show trial. It's all.
First of all, no one has accused Alex Jones of being a shooter in the Sandy Hook mass shooting. I don't know why he brought that up. He is accused specifically of defaming the victims' families. The family that comes to mind is the Posner family. They had to move 7 different times because the disinformation and conspiracy theories that Alex Jones was sharing with his audience convinced them that it was absolutely a false flag operation, and they started harassing the Posner family. They lost a child in that shooting. It's an absolutely tragic story, and they, again, had to move 7 different times because they feared for their lives.
Yeah, so the reason he does it is misdirection, and it's a way of disrespecting your audience. He's saying, I don't think my audience is that bright. They're not gonna be able to follow along on the real issues. So he does 2 different misdirections here. He says, they're blaming Sandy Hook on me and I didn't kill the kids. No one said that ever, as Anna pointed out. No, what they're blaming you for is lying about that shooting in the first place and saying that it was crisis actors, it didn't happen, and blaming the parents and saying the parents were lying, including about one of them seeing their kid with a bullet hole in their head. I mean, it's the lies he said about that are disgusting. So the parents are suing civilly about those things that Alex Jones said. No one in their lawsuit said Alex Jones killed the kids. That'd be nuts. That would be a weirdo conspiracy theory. That would be what Alex Jones does. But there's also a second misdirection. He says, they're trying to punish me for my free speech and take away my free speech. No,
the court said you have to comply with our orders. We're in the middle of a lawsuit here. You have to turn over this evidence, right? Exhibits and different documents, etc. And he said, no, I don't believe in the rule of law. I'm not going to listen to an American judge. I don't believe in I guess he doesn't believe in the justice system. He doesn't believe in America at all. And he said, no, I'm not going to follow your laws. Well, if you don't follow the laws, you lose. That's what happens. So, and so he's trying to misdirect you into thinking the judge ruled that he's not allowed to speak. No, the judge ruled that he was not complying with any court orders and was left with absolutely no choice, because you cannot continue the case if one side says, I'm not participating. And in extreme cases like that where they don't participate at all, the judge is forced to say the other side wins. And that's exactly what happened here. And the jury's gonna decide the damages. So understand how Alex Jones is lying to you.
Right, in fact, I mean, you could argue that the judge was encouraging speech from Alex Jones.
Yes.
Right, here's your opportunity to defend yourself in these lawsuits. This is the discovery process. You're supposed to turn over these documents and what's being requested of you. He didn't comply, despite being given multiple opportunities to do so. So no, you're being encouraged to speak more, but okay.
Yeah, and he says, look, it's not that the mainstream media doesn't do branding and brainwashing, they do, right? But in this case, why is his name brought up with Sandy Hook all the time? The media never says he shot anyone. The media says he did outrageous, atrocious lies about Sandy Hook. And that's true, he did. Now, because he's in the middle of those lawsuits, he's like, oh, well, I mean, I know there's school shootings. That's not what you were saying before. You were saying they were crisis actors, right? And in court, he admitted, oh, what I do is a clown show, and no sane person would believe me. And so now he's embarrassed by those admissions. Maybe that's why he didn't want to participate in the case any longer, because then he'd have to go on the stand, he'd have to get deposed, and he would have to say on tape.
He'd have to speak more on the stand, right?
That would be his right
right.
That's right, but funny how that seems to be the opposite of what he's saying on air as well. But he would have to say on tape that you guys could all see with your own eyes, yeah, I'm a fraud. I lie to my audience to try to get more views and more money and to sell them brain shakes. So that's how so of course I didn't mean it. Only lunatics would believe me. And he didn't want to say that, and he lost the cases. So it is what it is. And I think the real question is, how much are they gonna get from him? And if those judgments are significant, I know what he'll do next. He'll ignore that law and he'll say, I'm not gonna pay freedom of speech, etc.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pay what I've been ordered to pay by the court. So freedom of speech, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, look, that's their excuse for everything. You got pulled over for speeding, freedom of speech. I'm not gonna pay the traffic ticket because freedom of speech. Okay, so he'll try that, but at some point, someone in government has to say, no, we actually have laws in this country, and you will abide by them, and if you don't, you'll go to prison. That's it.
All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be right back.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 15 billion views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively, what do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Cenk in Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
Unfortunately, there are more coronavirus-related deaths. At this point, more than 750,000 Americans have died from the pandemic, and we're still hearing cases where people are unvaccinated and still think that ivermectin is the solution. A Florida teacher, for instance, was admitted to the hospital with COVID-19 related complications, and she has died weeks after her husband filed a lawsuit against the medical center in an attempt to force her doctors to treat her with ivermectin. The doctors, of course, said no, because this is not a medication that's been proven to treat coronavirus. Tamara Drock, a 47-year-old teacher near Palm Beach, Florida, passed away from COVID complications after 12 weeks in the hospital. Her husband had sued the hospital last month to force doctors to administer ivermectin, an anti-parasite medication. But the judge didn't buy his arguments in court. And so Palm Beach County Circuit Judge James Nutt rejected Drock's lawsuit, saying allowing judges to countermand doctors' decisions could set a dangerous precedent. He urged the Drocks and the hospital to try to reach an agreement on their own. A deal fell apart after a doctor agreed to administer ivermectin at a dosage the family's attorney said was too low. Because the family attorney would certainly know better than the doctor administering the drug that has not been proven to treat coronavirus. Now, after his wife's death, Drock is not willing to give up. Instead, he plans on expanding his crusade so that others don't go through what he went through. He says, quote, "I'm hoping they name a law after her so no one has to go through this. If she had walked out of the hospital, she could have had the medication." He also says, "We don't know if the drug would have saved her life, but it could have." He argues it could have.
No, it couldn't have.
No, exactly. Maybe it wouldn't have done anything, but we're pursuing the case strictly from a legal perspective. Every person in Florida has a constitutional right to choose what is done with their own body.
Be careful, right wing, if you want to agree with that,
because then women would have a right to do whatever they want with their body. And I know that that's like your nightmare.
That's always the carve out though.
Yeah.
That's always the carve
Yeah,
out.
you can do anything you want with your body, unless you're a woman, and if you get pregnant, then we own your body and we can do whatever we want to it. Anyways, now in this case, we can say, well, all right, Jake, then flip it. I like to say we should always look at it what if the shoe was on the other foot? Why can't they take whatever they want? Well, it's when you're in a hospital, the doctors have a certain responsibility to give you treatment that is effective. So just fill in the blank with other medicine and you'll begin to get a sense of how absurd it is. What if they were insisting, no, it's gotta be Metamucil. You've gotta give her Metamucil to treat her coronavirus. Well, the doctors would say, well, that's got nothing to do with anything. No, that we're not gonna give her that, right? They say, no, I'm gonna force you to give her that. Okay, but maybe it's harmless, right? But what if it was chemotherapy? And they're saying, you must give my wife chemotherapy. Well, the doctor's has taken a pledge to not do any harm, and he can't give you chemotherapy. It doesn't make any sense for this. Ivermectin is the same thing in the sense that it's not necessarily as harmful as chemotherapy, but it's not for this disease. It just isn't. They picked a rando drug almost out of the blue, like ivermectin, okay? And they're saying, now doctors, even though you all know this is wrong, we demand that you do the wrong thing and treat and give the wrong medicine, otherwise we're gonna sue you. Now, earlier in the show, we did a story where they now have bounties on firing teachers if they teach about racism, right? That's in New Hampshire, $500 a pop, you turn them in. Now there's bounties, in a sense, through this lawsuit on doctors. If you don't give the wrong medicine, we're gonna sue you.
Yeah, and I mean, what should also be considered is the fact that you have a woman who's being treated at this hospital for 12 weeks. So clearly there's some trust in the healthcare professionals who are providing care for your wife. So if you trust the doctors, then why not listen to the advice and the expertise from the doctors, right? And if you don't trust the doctors, why admit your wife to this hospital? It's just, look, we're in this weird, and it's frustrating. We're in this place where everyone thinks they're an expert on everything, right? Mothers, conservatives, they think that they're educational experts and they know better than teachers and educators who have gone to school, gone to college, got their credentials and have the expertise necessary to do their jobs. They want to tell teachers what they can and can't teach in history classes. Then in this case, you have people who think they're medical experts because they watched a Joe Rogan podcast or something and they're convinced. We have to trust in people who have gone through the process of becoming experts in their field. It's not to say that everyone gets it right 100% of the time. Of course, mistakes are made sometimes. But in this case, for ordinary Americans who have no medical training to just think that they know better than doctors and to demand that the doctors prescribe something that has not been medically proven as a treatment for COVID is insane.
So, Anna, I will do a slight asterisk on what you said, but I love where you were going with it, and so let me see if I can build on it. So it depends on the field, right? So if you say trust politicians because they're experts in their field, I say no deal.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you say people who've studied a long time with particular expertise and knowledge that you need, doctors, engineers is a great example, right? Now, it's not just whether I trust them or not. What's the alternative? They say, well, you can either trust 99% of the world's doctors or Joe Rogan. And by the way, the media in this country is poison. So corporate media tells you, oh, don't worry, the people in charge and the powerful and the wealthy are looking out for your best interest. It's absurd. Don't worry, politicians are not corrupt when they take millions of dollars in legalized bribes. So corporate media lies to you in one direction, then right-wing media comes in, and Rogan and Dore and Tucker and all of them come in and go, no, don't listen to the damn doctors. Meathead over here knows better than all the doctors in the country. And people believe him because the doctor doesn't have a podcast and Rogan does. And so they listen to him and they think, well, I trusted him on this and that, and he knows what he's talking about on MMA, so he probably knows better than 99% of the world's doctors. And so the media poisons the culture and gets them to say, no, do not. Now, to build on what you're saying, Anna, last thought on this is the engineers. Imagine if they did this, and I'm worried about putting this out into the world because they might. And they said, don't listen to the engineers. They say to build that bridge with that kind of material, you shouldn't. You should build it with paper mache. Rogan told me. And now they say paper mache is just for horses. It's not. Paper mache is also for humans. That's why we should build a bridge with paper mache. Don't listen to the engineers. They're goddamn experts. They studied this for years. So hence, they don't know, the rando online knows, okay? So God help us, that's probably next, because they've attacked every source of actual facts and information that's trying to help you. So if you want to believe the meatheads instead of trained doctors, that's on you, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and look, it's not just about meatheads. And yes, I mentioned Rogan specifically because he's the most popular, right? He's got a massive platform and he's influential. But he's not the only one, and there is an incentive to cover these crazy like conspiracy theories about COVID, unproven prophylactics and also treatments for COVID. Like you see it play out in the numbers, right? The number of views that any given show gets if they cover COVID from the perspective of a conspiracy theorist.
100%. I mean, that's look. Tucker is actually a smart guy who drives a lot of these conspiracy theories for his own political purposes. But meatheads like Rogan and Dore saw all the viewers going in that direction, and they were like, "Ooh, chase the viewers, chase the viewers! Oh my God, I'm going to get more views. I'm going to get more listens. I'm going to get more money." Even Rogan, who should be immune from that, but ironically, he doesn't have immunity from greed, or maybe he's just dumb. But it doesn't matter, guys. Bottom line is, just think about the engineer analogy. If all of a sudden a podcaster told you that the engineers don't know how to build bridges and he knows better, would you trust the podcaster to build the bridge instead? Well, of course you wouldn't, right? Because then the bridge is gonna collapse. And they say, after we build a bridge, your family's gonna go over it. Would you trust the podcaster or 99% of the engineers? Now, they're saying the same thing about doctors. And the doctors are also affecting whether you live or die. They're saying, here's the right medicine. And about a giant percentage of this country, whatever the number is, a giant percentage is going, no, I think the meathead podcaster I'm gonna put my life in his hands instead of agreeing to 99% of the doctors. It's mental. You should actually seek treatment from a mental health professional.
All right, speaking of Tucker, we've got a story about him when we come back from the break. See you then.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember, we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're going to do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and you guys as well. We love doing the show with you. Jibo61 wrote in on Super Chat. Hey guys, really appreciate what you do and stand for. And that you stand for the people. Cenk, please give me that. Of course, I just did it. Love you guys. Anna, please challenge Candace Owens to an education debate. Thanks.
No, I mean, I would love to. Only problem is she just like preemptively blocked me on Twitter, so I don't really have a way of reaching out to her.
I'm sure we can, but she's not gonna want to debate. If she starts to lose clout, then she might chase Anna. Right, but that's how these games are played, and they're silly. Anyways, Casper.
All right, well, Tucker Carlson is taking a page out of Donald Trump's book and questioning whether Kamala Harris, the nation's first biracial vice president, is actually an American at all. So who knows? Let's hear his argument. What does he have to say?
So the one thing we know for sure about Kamala Harris is we should all be very, very grateful to have her because she's historic for reasons that no one ever explains. But there's a lot we don't know about Kamala Harris. Most people probably don't know she really grew up in Canada. That's where she went to high school. She's not from this country in that sense, or she's certainly also from Canada. Okay, didn't know that. Doesn't mean she's not gonna be a good vice president, but why haven't we heard that?
I don't care. I mean, look, I know what he's trying to do here, right? But like, we're supposed to celebrate because this is historic for reasons that no one's explained. He knows what he's doing, come on.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted by this guy. And the thing that sucks is he's influential and he's strategic and certainly better at planning where he wants to go than Donald Trump is, which is terrifying because I actually think that if he does find himself in a position of political power, right? There are of course rumors that he might run for the White House sometime in the future. He would definitely be more destructive than Donald Trump because he actually has a strategic mind.
Yeah, no, Trump and Tucker are the two most dangerous guys. The rest, I think, is easy, normal corporate Republicans. So, in terms of this issue that he just manufactured out of thin air, number one, she's historic. No one's ever explained. Okay, Tucker, she's the first woman to be vice president. So what you're saying is, I don't care. Who cares about women, right? She's the first African American, she's the first biracial to be vice president. So you can say that's not important to you, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised by that. but that's why she's historic. That role is, right? Now, funny enough, I also agree that doesn't mean it means something in terms of history, but it doesn't mean anything in terms of her performance.
Right.
So, okay, all those things are great, and I'm glad the country got to that point. But right now, what has she done? What's her policies? What has she fought for? I did a very long video yesterday about her. She's done nothing on policy. If he had critique of her on policy, that's perfectly fine. We have critique of her on policy, a lot, right? But he's going after her as non-American. Now, you do that, they even on the left, they don't do it for white people, right? You could be a Democrat, and if you're white, nobody ever questioned where Bill Clinton was from. Nobody ever said, oh, he went to Oxford, huh? Because he's a Rhodes Scholar. So I guess he studied abroad. Is he really American? Because he's a good old white boy from Arkansas. So
Tucker's mama and papa sent him to boarding school in Switzerland. So is he really Swiss?
Well, Anna, that's where I was going. That's why I wanted to look up the name of the school that he went to. So Tucker's the heir to the Swanson fortune. He's been enormously wealthy his whole life, okay?
But he's a real fighter against the elites.
Yeah, and his great-grandpapa was of Swiss origin. And he'd been sent to boarding schools for most of his life. I mean, look at the life that he led.
Isn't boarding school where rich people send their kids because they don't want to deal with them?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Okay. Now, look, some really want him to get a good education, etc. But anyways, but in this case, they sent him to Switzerland. So I was looking up the name of the school that he went to. It was Collège de la Monde. Remember, Switzerland is partly German ethnicity and partly French ethnicity. So he went to a French school in Switzerland. Mr. Populist here, questioning that Kamala Harris, because her mom had to move to Montreal for a job, went to high school, not in the beginning, but in high school, and just high school in Canada. Meanwhile, he's over at a French school in Switzerland, at Collège de la Monde. Carlson, okay, Carlson de Garçon, where are you?
Oh, Garçon.
Because Swanson, frozen dinners. Okay, Carlson de Garçon, right?
You're crazy.
And he knows that. He lived his life. He knows he was at a fancy French boarding school in Europe. He says this stuff anyway, because you know why? He's like, my honest is never gonna find out. I'll just pretend they do it and nobody will ever find out I did it.
Yeah, and no one is going to set the same standards for Tucker Carlson that he's setting for Kamala Harris. Let's just keep it real.
Yeah, and part of that is because of the racism.
Yeah, no, totally, 100%. So anyway, he's not quite done with Kamala Harris yet. Actually, before we get to the next clip, I just want to note one other thing. Listen, the VP's role is mostly useless, okay? The VP is just there in case something happens to the president and that person, the VP, steps in, right? So sure, the Biden administration put immigration issues on Kamala Harris to deal with. And that is an impossible situation to deal with unilaterally, especially as a vice president who doesn't really have much power to begin with.
No, let's be honest. They screwed her.
They did.
Here, take this toxic bag,
dude,
and tie it around your ankle. Good luck.
Dude, so yesterday, Biden signed the bipartisan infrastructure bill into law. And Kamala Harris, of course, was there. And so she gave this brief speech, applauding him and applauding all the progress that's been made. And you could just, the lack of charisma, the complete apathy, you could see it. She's not very happy. She's not a very happy person right now.
No. In fact, the CNN long rumor-filled gossipy story about Kamala Harris on CNN was filled with donor complaints that Biden's not helping her enough because she totally works for the donors. So they want her to be featured more, right? So by the way, look at us making a far more scathing critique of Kamala Harris than Tucker Carlson. But for his audience, he'd have to then say, oh yeah, they're corrupt, but that means Republicans, including Trump, are also corrupt for taking the donor money. So instead, she's black. That's his critique of Kamala Harris.
And of course, what could be more relevant than talking about Kamala Harris's personal life and her dating history? He gets into that in this clip.
By the way, how did someone who clearly is not liked by the people around her and clearly isn't very good at her job get so high up? Well, we know her first meaningful job in politics was given to her by her boyfriend at the time, who was married, Willie Brown, most powerful Democrat in California. But we know that Willie Brown is not the only powerful person she dated. And this is pretty interesting. We're not exactly sure what to make of it. But it turns out that Kamala Harris also dated the tabloid TV show host, Montel Williams, who's always doing shows about people's weird sex lives. We know that because of this video. Watch.
Long before she met Doug Emhoff, she dated some prominent men, including in 2001, former talk show host Montel Williams. Back then, he was the famous one and had to introduce her to the paparazzi.
So we know that Montel Williams called her Kamala. We also know she calls herself Kamala sometimes, but that's kind of all we know. So what was that relationship like? What did Montel Williams think of it? So we would love to talk to Montel Williams about his torrid relationship with Kamala, because that might be one of those blanks we'd like to fill in. Anyway, he is always welcome on this show.
Because none of this matters. None of it matters. None of it matters. Like right wingers, guys, please, you're being distracted with this nonsense, okay? Like there's valid criticism of the Biden administration, valid criticism of Kamala. This is just garbage. This is nothing more than like tabloid nonsense. It does nothing to better your life at all, at all. This is just, oh, we hate the other side. So let's get into the dating life of Kamala. Who cares?
Who cares? But so why is he doing that? Because the first part was she's not really American, that's the racism. And look at the guys she dated, that's how she got up in the world, that's sexism. And that's his audience's bread and butter. So he knows they're gonna eat that up. Now, meanwhile, they're robbing the place in the back, right?
Totally.
Like Kamala Harris's donors, the Republican donors that Tucker Carlson loves, are robbing us blind with their tax cuts for the wealthy, higher drug prices, etc. And meanwhile, Tucker's like, Montel Williams, I'm talking about Montel Williams, take all the money out now. Take it out now. The idiots aren't paying attention at all. I got them with racism and sexism.
No, but that is hard-hitting news. Montel Williams dated Kamala Harris. He introduced her on the red carpet. Oh my God.
You know why they brought in Montel Williams?
So pathetic.
One, because he's like especially the older crowd remembers him as a talk show host and so salacious, etc. But number two, they didn't have to show the video. I think the other woman in the video is Montel Williams' daughter, but they never clarified that. So it almost looks like he's dating two people, including Kamala Harris. You see that? That's why they showed the video, okay? And so it's all subliminal messages to their audience, hater, 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 hater based on her gender, based on her race and her name. Kamala, oh, it's so funny to make fun of her name, ha 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 ha. Said Carlson the Garçon. Okay, that's why he used to wear the bow ties, remember?
Yes, I do remember.
When he changed into a fake populist, he took the bow ties off because he realized people hate people in bow ties, right? But until then, because he grew up as Carlson the Garçon, he used to wear bow ties because that's where they wore at College de Le Monde, where the non-American Tucker Carlson got his education.
And listen, if you want to provide a valid critique of how Democrats use identity politics, like that definitely exists, right? So listen, I have nothing against Kamala Harris because of her identity, but I do have something against the Democratic Party providing this like illusion of change and exclusion and all of that. When in reality, like I think it's actually far more insulting that they don't look at the substance or they don't talk about the substance of the very person that they're nominating or appointing. They just say, oh, this is the first gay person, this is the first black person, this is the first whatever. Cool, that's great, but what is their substance? What do they stand for? What do they want to do to actually further equality or further rights for the American electorate, right? That's what matters. Like that's genuine and I think valid critique, but he's not gonna go there because he doesn't want those things, right? He doesn't actually care about providing valid critique. He loves to get in the dirt. He loves rolling around in that dirt, right? Montel Williams this, Kamala Harris pronounces her name like that, who cares?
So just to finish that thought, ironically, Pelosi and Tucker Carlson are the different sides of the same coin, right? So the Pelosi's of the world say, Kamala Harris is a black woman, so you should ignore everything when we make drug prices higher and not lower. We promise you lower drug prices, but it's okay. It was a black woman who screwed you over and gave you higher drug prices. No, it's not okay. I love that we have the first woman vice president. I love that we have the first biracial, first African-American vice president. But we need her to do the actual right policies, otherwise it's nearly irrelevant, right? Now, Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, says he loves that they have higher drug prices, so everybody he knows can get rich. But he says you guys should hate her because she's black, she's a woman. And by the way, bottom line here, what was that segment with Willie Brown and Montel Williams and who she sleeps with? He was calling her a slut.
Yeah, of course, we know what he's doing.
Yes, and so Tucker Carlson's a terrible person, and if you watch him and you cheerlead on that, you're a terrible person.
But don't call him a terrible person to his face, because then he'll cry and cry while he's wearing his little lumberjack shirt. It's very, very sad. All right, one more story before we end the second hour. So, Republicans are capitalizing on the failures of Democrats when it comes to decriminalizing marijuana. Now, this is a layup. This is something that Democrats could have easily accomplished, especially considering how many states have already legalized marijuana, not just for medicinal use, but also recreational use. Now, Republicans in the US House of Representatives have introduced legislation that would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level and eliminate legal hazards facing many cannabis-related businesses while regulating its use like alcohol. This is a great proposal. Let me give you more. South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace has been reported to be leading the draft. Her legislation follows a bill from Democrat and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, which hasn't gained traction, probably because Democrats haven't really fought for it. But Mace, a first-term lawmaker, said the measure has 5 Republican co-sponsors. So what's in this legislation? Well, it's titled the States Reform Act. The Republican legislation would defer to state authorities on matters of prohibition and regulation. It would prohibit marijuana use by those under 21, restrict advertising, protect access to hiring and benefits for veterans who have used cannabis, and expunge the records of people convicted of nonviolent cannabis-only related offenses. I think this makes a lot of sense, but it's also telling that Republicans are pushing for this when, again, it could have been a very easy layup for Democrats.
First of all, let me be super clear. I'll take it, deal. And in some ways, I think it might be better than the Democratic bill. The Democratic bill has more bureaucracy, and some of that is necessary, some of it is not necessary, if you ask me. The excise tax on the Democratic bill is 25%, on the Republican bill it's 3%. I think it should be somewhere in the middle, but overall, I don't mind that. The FDA should regulate, that's in the Democratic bill. In this case, the Republicans say the Treasury's Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau should regulate. You say tomato, I say tomato. I'll definitely take this deal.
Yeah.
And by the way, not only would I take the deal, I'll give credit to the Republicans who brought it to us. Why are we opposed to Republicans? Because we're on Team Democrat? No, we can't stand Democratic leadership. We're opposed to them because they do the wrong things 99% of the time. But in this case, these 5 Republicans are absolutely right. I'm super happy to support them on this particular provision. By the way, corporate media will then yell at us. Oh, did you know that her other positions are this, this, and this, and so you shouldn't support her on this legislation? No, I don't care what you say. I don't care how you smear them. And I don't care about the rest of their track record. I'll fight them on those issues.
Right.
On this issue, we agree. I'm gonna take yes for an answer. Now, and so number one, on the substance of it, vote with the Republicans on this bill, okay? That's the most progressive show in America telling you that, okay? Number 2, Democrats are idiots.
Yep.
Idiots.
Yep.
2/3 of the country, even more than 2/3 now, say legalize marijuana. Democrats had that in their lap. That was their issue, and they're like, oh, they fumble it away to the Republicans because they're morons. Dumbest people in the world is Democratic leadership. I hope the Republicans pass it and humiliate the Democrats. All right, we got, for members, a bonus episode now. Did Laura Ingraham do the dumbest episode in cable news history or not? It's actually a controversy. We're gonna ask you guys about it. TYT.com/join to become a member. We'll have the link down below in the description box, or hit the join button below the video on YouTube. And while you're watching our videos, if you like them, use super thanks. That makes a giant difference. We'll see you in the member section.